Shila Gurudev ki jai. Nityal Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtar Shitashmar Shila Bhakti Vedanta Vaman Gosai Maharaj ki jai. Nityal Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtar Shitashmar Shila Bhakti Vedanta Sai Maharaj Shila Prabhupada ki jai. Nityal Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtar Shitashmar Shila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Gosai Maharaj ki jai. Nityal Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtar Shitashmar Shila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Gosai Prabhupada ki jai. Nityal Vishnu Mahabhagavat Shila Bhaksharas Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Nityal Vishnu Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Shila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Shri Rupa Gauriya Guru Varga ki jai. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Bhatta Shagnath Shar Gosai Prabhu ki jai. Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gopal Shahada Vrinda ki jai. Namachay Shila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Kshetra Mandal Gaura Mandal Vaja Mandal Mathura Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Sarva Abhishta Bharata Giriraj Maharaj ki jai. Shri Radha Kund Shama Kund ki jai. Shri Mona Devi Ganga Devi ki jai. Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai. Shri Bhakti Devi ki jai. Shri Purnamasi Yoga Maya ki jai. Shri Gopeshwar Mahadev ki jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Samagata Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shinitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo. Grantara Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai. Okay, just sharing my screen. Oh, okay. Sorry guys, I'm not, I didn't set up. Where is it? It's in, is it in miscellaneous? Yes, it is. Granta's PDF, Daily Bhagavatam, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Ovalachan. Okay. Danda Pranams, Janardan and Gagraj. Okay. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Radhikaya Priyatmane Shri Śrīmad Bhakti Vedanta Narayanati Namine. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Śrīmate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Namo mahavadanyaya Krishna prema pradayate Krishnaya Krishna chaitanya namne gauratishe namaha. Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalaya Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tarabhaktaya Namo Namaha. Yam Pravrajantam Anupetam Apeta Krityam Dvaipayano Virahakatara Ajuhavo Putreti Tanmayataya Taravo Vinedu Stam Sarva Bhuta Hridaya Munimanatosmi. Narayanam Namaskritam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. Shrinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shavana Kirtana Redantasto Yabhadrani Vidunoti Suritsatam. Nashta Preshvabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Tavaivasmi, tavaivasmi, na jivami tvaya vina. Iti vigyaya radhe tvam nayamam charanantikam. Bhaktya vihina aparadha lakshaya kshiptashtakama ditarangamarde. Kripa maitam sharanam prapana vrinde namaste charana ravindam. Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Rama Rama Hare Hare. Dandavat pranams Sangeeta Didi and Raseshwari Mataji. Okay. So yesterday, Kardama Muni, so after Brahma returned with Narad and the Kumaras, and then the 9 sons married the 9 daughters of Kardama. Then after Kardama Muni, he took the Lord to a secluded place and he made prayers to him. And Kardama Muni said to the Lord, "Your appearance in our home is your causeless mercy." And then he glorifies the Lord's different form, all the different, the Lord's forms and qualities, and he requests permission to renounce his household. And then Lord Kapila, he responds, he says, "I appeared to fulfill my promise to you, to explain the principles of self-realization and to revive the knowledge of Sankhya. Go as you desire and worship me. You will achieve eternal life." So that's where we made it up to yesterday. What verse is that? That's 39. Okay, here we are. In your own heart, through your intellect, you will always see me, the supreme effulgent soul dwelling within the hearts of all living entities. Thus you will achieve the state of eternal life, free from all lamentation and fear. Okay. Maitreya Uvacha Evam Samuditastena Kapilena Prajapati Dakshini Kritatam Prityo Vanameva Jagamaha. Sri Maitreya said, thus when Kardama Muni, the progenitor of human society, was spoken to in fullness by his son, Kapila, he circumambulated him, and with a good pacified mind, he at once left for the forest. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Going to the forest is compulsory for everyone. It is not a mental excursion upon which one person goes and another does not. Everyone should go to the forest at least as a vanaprastha. Forest going means to take 100% shelter of the Supreme Lord, as explained by Prahlad Maharaj in his talks with his father. Sada samudvigna dhyam. People who have accepted a temporary material body are always full of anxieties. One should not, therefore, be very much affected by this material body, but should try to be freed. But the preliminary process to become freed is to go to the forest or give up family relationships and exclusively engage in Krishna consciousness. That is the purpose of going to the forest. Otherwise, the forest is only a place of monkeys and wild animals. To go to the forest does not mean to become a monkey or a ferocious animal. It means to accept exclusively the shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and engage oneself in full service. One does not actually have to go to the forest. At the present moment, this is not at all advisable for a man who has spent his life all along in big cities. As explained by Prahlad Maharaj, Hitvatma patam griham andakupam. One should not remain always engaged in the responsibilities of family life, because family life without Krishna consciousness is just like a blind well. Alone in a field, if one falls into a blind well and no one is there to save him, he may cry for years, and no one will see or hear where the crying is coming from. Death is sure. Similarly, those who are forgetful of their eternal relationship with the Supreme Lord are in the blind well of family life. Their position is very ominous. Prahlad Maharaj advised that one should give up this well somehow or other and take to Krishna consciousness and thus be freed from material entanglement, which is full of anxieties. Vratam sa astito monam atmaika sharano muni nisango vyacharat kshonim anagnir aniketana. The sage Kardama accepted silence as a vow in order to think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and take shelter of him exclusively. Without association, he traveled over the surface of the globe as a sannyasi, devoid of any relationship with fire or shelter. Purport. Here the words anagnir aniketana are very significant. A sannyasi should be completely detached from fire and any residential quarters. A grihastha has a relationship with fire, either for offering sacrifices or for cooking. But a sannyasi is freed from these two responsibilities. He does not have to cook or offer fire for sacrifice, because he is always engaged in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, he has already accomplished all ritualistic performances of religion. Aniketana means without lodging. He should not have his own house, but should depend completely on the Supreme Lord for his food and lodging. He should travel. Mona means silence. Unless one becomes silent, he cannot think completely about the pastimes and activities of the Lord. It is not that because one is a fool and cannot speak nicely, he therefore takes the vow of Mona. Rather, one becomes silent so that people will not disturb him. It is said that by Chanaka Pandit that a rascal appears very intelligent as long as he does not speak. But speaking is the test. The so-called silence of a silent and personalist Swami indicates that he has nothing to say. He simply wants to beg. But the silence adopted by Kardama Muni was not like that. He became silent for relief from nonsensical talk. One is called a Muni when he remains grave and does not talk nonsense. Maharaj Ambarish set a very good example. Whenever he spoke about the pastimes of the Lord. Mona necessitates refraining from nonsensical talking and engaging the talking facility and the pastimes of the Lord. In that way, one can chant and hear more about the Lord in order to perfect his life. Vrata means that one should take a vow as explained in Bhagavad Gita, Atmanitvam Adambhitvam. Says that Vrata means that one should take a vow without hankering for personal respect and without being proud of one's material position. Ahimsa means not being violent. There are 18 processes for attaining knowledge and perfection, and by his vow, Kardama Muni adopted all the principles of self-realization. Mano brahmani yunjano yatatsar asata param gunava bhase viguna eka bhaktanubhavite. He fixed his mind upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Parabrahman, who is beyond cause and effect, who manifests the three modes of material nature, who is beyond those three modes. and who is perceived only through unfailing devotional service. Purport. Whenever there is bhakti, there must be three things present: the devotee, the devotion, and the Lord. Without these three, bhakta, bhakti, and bhagavan, there is no meaning to the word bhakti. Kardama Muni fixed his mind on the Supreme Brahman and realized him through bhakti, or devotional service. This indicates that he fixed his mind on the personal feature of the Lord, because bhakti cannot be executed unless one has realization on the personal feature of the absolute truth. Gunavabhase, he is beyond the three modes of material nature, but it is due to him that the three modes of material nature are manifested. In other words, although the material energy is an emanation of the Supreme Lord, he is not affected as we are by the modes of material nature. We are conditioned souls, but he is not affected, although the material nature has emanated from him. He is the supreme living entity and is never affected by Maya. But we are subordinate, minute living entities, prone to be affected by the limitations of Maya. If he is in constant contact with the Supreme Lord by devotional service, the conditioned living entity also becomes freed from the infection of Maya. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Sa Gunan Samatidaitan. A person engaged in Krishna consciousness is at once liberated from the influence of the three modes of material nature. In other words, once the conditioned soul engages himself in devotional service, he also becomes liberated like the Lord. Nirahankritir nirmamascha nirdvandva samadrik svadrik pratyak prashanta dhir dhira prashantor mir ivodadi. Thus he gradually became unaffected by the false ego of material identity and became free from material affection. Undisturbed, equal to everyone, and without duality, he could indeed see himself also. His mind was turned inward and was perfectly calm, like an ocean unagitated by waves. Purport. When one's mind is in full Krishna consciousness, and one fully engages in rendering devotional service to the Lord, he becomes just like an ocean unagitated by waves. This very example is also cited in Bhagavad Gita. One should become like the ocean. The ocean is filled by many thousands of rivers, and millions of tons of its water evaporates into clouds. Yet the ocean is in the same unagitated ocean. The laws of nature may work, but if one is fixed in devotional service at the lotus feet of the Lord, he is not agitated, for he is introspective. He does not look outside to material nature, but he looks in to the spiritual nature of his existence. With a sober mind, he simply engages in the service of the Lord. Thus he realizes his own self without self-identification with matter and without affection for material possessions. Such a great devotee is never in trouble with others, because he sees everyone from the platform of spiritual understanding. He sees himself and others in the right perspective. I like this quote. Okay. Vasudeve Bhagavate Sarvagye Pratyagatmani Parena Bhakti Bhavena Labdhatma Mukta Bandhuna. That's verse 44. Okay. He thus became liberated from conditioned life and became self-situated in transcendental devotional service to the personality of Godhead Vasudeva, the omniscient supersoul within everyone. Purport. When one engages in the transcendental devotional service of the Lord, one becomes aware that his constitutional position as an individual soul is to be eternally a servitor of the Supreme Lord Vasudeva. Self-realization does not mean that because the Supreme Lord and the individual soul are both souls, they are equal in every respect. The individual soul is prone to be conditioned, and the Supreme Soul is never conditioned. When the conditioned soul realizes that he is subordinate to the Supreme Soul, his position is called labdhatma, self-realization, or mukta bandhana, freedom from material contamination. Material contamination continues as long as one thinks that he is as good as the Supreme Lord or is equal with him. This condition is the last snare of Maya. Maya always influences the conditioned soul. Even after much meditation and speculation, if one continues to think himself one with the Supreme Lord, it is to be understood that he is still in the last snares of the spell of Maya. The word parena is very significant. Para means transcendental, untinged by material contamination. Full consciousness that one is an eternal servant to the Lord is called para bhakti. If one has any identification with material things and executes devotional service for attainment of some material gain, that is vida bhakti, contaminated bhakti. One can actually become liberated by execution of para bhakti. Another word mentioned here is sarvagye. The supersoul sitting within the heart is all cognizant. He knows. I may forget my past activities due to the change of body, but because the Supreme Lord as Paramatma is sitting within me, he knows everything. Therefore, the results of my past karma or past activities is awarded to me. I may forget, but he awards me suffering or enjoyment for the misdeeds or good deeds of my past life. One should not think that he is freed from reaction because he has forgotten the actions of his past life. Reactions will take place, and what kind of reactions there will be is judged by the Supersoul, the witness. Atmanam sarvabhuteshu bhagavatam avastitam apashyat sarvabhutani bhagavatyapi chatmani. He began to see that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is seated in everyone's heart, and that everyone is existing on him, because he is the Supersoul of everyone. That everyone is existing on the Supreme Personality of Godhead does not mean that everyone is also Godhead. This is also explained in Bhagavad Gita. Everything is resting on him, the Supreme Lord, but that does not mean that the Supreme Lord is also everywhere. This mysterious position has to be understood by highly advanced devotees. There are three kinds of devotees: the neophyte devotee, the intermediate devotee, and the advanced devotee. The neophyte devotee does not understand the techniques of devotional service, but simply offers devotional service to the deity in the temple. The intermediate devotee understands who God is, who is a devotee, who is a non-devotee, and who is innocent, and he deals with such persons differently. But a person who sees that the Lord is sitting as Paramatma in everyone's heart, and that everything is depending or existing on the transcendental energy of the Supreme Lord, is in the highest devotional position. These three things that Srila Prabhupada was mentioning here, that the neophyte does not understand these three things, these are three verses from the 11th canto. This one's Acharyam eva haraye pujam yashadhaye yate natat bhakteshu chandeshu bhakta praktasmita. This one is Ishvare tar adhineshu balisheshu disachucha. And then this one is, how does it go? Bhagavat Bhavam Atmana. Sarva Bhuteshu Yabhashed Bhagavat Bhavam Atmana. Bhutani Bhagavatam. Vesham Bhagavatuttama. Ichadvesha. Lots of times Srila Prabhupada's purports are like that. He's using verses inside his purports, even though you don't realize that it's a verse actually from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam or Chaitanya Charitamrita or someplace. But lots of times it's just a translation of the verse. Ichadvesha vihinena sarvatra samachetasa bhagavar bhakti yuktena prapta bhagavati gati. Freed from all hatred and desire, Kardama Muni, being equal to everyone because of discharging uncontaminated devotional service, ultimately attains the path back to Godhead. Purport. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, only by devotional service can one understand the transcendental nature of the Supreme Lord and, after understanding him perfectly in his transcendental position, enter into the Kingdom of Godhead. The process of entering into the Kingdom of Godhead is Tripada Bhuti Gati, or the path back home, back to Godhead, by which one can attain the ultimate goal of life. Kardama Muni, by his perfect devotional knowledge and service, achieved this ultimate goal, which is known as Bhagavati Gati. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 3rd canto, 24th chapter of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, entitled The Renunciation of Kardama Muni. Now, chapter 25. The glories of devotional service. Śaunaka Uvacha Kapilastatva Kapilastatta Sankyata Bhagavanatma Mayaya Jata Swayam Aja Shaksharatma Pragyaptayendrinam. Okay, so remember the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is a conversation within a conversation within a conversation. So right now, but the beginning conversation of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, like the first one, is Sutta Goswami speaking to all the sages. So Śaunaks said to Sutta Goswami, although he is unborn, the Supreme Personality of Godhead took birth as Kapila Muni by his internal potency. He descended to disseminate transcendental knowledge for the benefit of the whole human race. Purport. The word Atma Pragyaptaye indicates that the Lord descends for the benefit of the human race to give transcendental knowledge. Material necessities are quite sufficiently provided for. Material necessities are quite sufficiently provided for in the Vedic knowledge, which offers a program for good living conditions and gradual elevation to the platform of goodness. And the mode of goodness, one's knowledge expands. On the platform of passion, there is no knowledge, for passion is simply an impetus to enjoy material benefits. On the platform of ignorance, there is no knowledge and no enjoyment, but simply life almost like that of animals. The Vedas are meant to elevate one from the mode of ignorance to the platform of goodness. When one is situated in the mode of goodness, he is able to understand knowledge of the self, or transcendental knowledge. This knowledge cannot be appreciated by any ordinary man. Therefore, since a disciplic succession is required, this knowledge is expounded either by the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself or by his bona fide devotee. Śaunaka Muni also states here that Kapila, the incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, took birth or appeared simply to appreciate and disseminate transcendental knowledge. Simply to understand that one is not matter but spirit soul is not sufficient knowledge for understanding the self and his activities. One must be situated in the activities of Brahman. Knowledge of those activities is explained by the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. Such transcendental knowledge can be appreciated in human society, but not in animal society, as clearly indicated here by the word nrinam, for the human beings. Human beings are meant for regulated life. By nature, there is regulation in animal life also, but it is not like the regulated life as described in the scriptures or by the authorities. Human life is regulated life, not animal life. In regulated life only can one understand transcendental knowledge. Nahyasya varshmana pungsam varimna sarvayoginam Vishruta Shruta Devasya Puri Triptyanti Me Sava. Shaunak continued, "There is no one who knows more than the Lord himself. No one is more worshipable or more mature. No one is more worshipable or more mature a yogi than he. He is therefore the master of the Vedas, and to hear about him always is the actual pleasure of the senses." I like that. To hear about him always is the actual pleasure of the senses. That's real. That's real sense enjoyment, is hearing. Vajratimala said that Jadandi Maharaj, when she was married to him, he used to say that Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is my sense gratification. And this is kind of saying that same thing. Hearing about the Lord is always the actual pleasure from the senses. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita, actually I want to just say this. To hear about him always is the actual pleasure of the senses. In Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that no one can be equal to or greater than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is confirmed in the Vedas also. Eko bahunam yo vidadhati kaman. He is the supreme living entity and is supplying the necessities of all other living entities. Thus, all other living entities, both Vishnu Tattva and Jiva Tattva, are subordinate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. This same concept is confirmed here. Nahyasya varshmana pungsam. Amongst the living entities, no one can surpass the Supreme Person because no one is richer, more famous, stronger, more beautiful, wiser, or more renounced than he. These qualifications make him the Supreme Godhead, the cause of all causes. Yogis are very proud of performing wonderful feats, but no one can compare to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. No one can compare to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anyone who is associated with the Supreme Lord is accepted a first-class yogi. He's accepted as a first-class yogi. Devotees may not be as powerful as the Supreme Lord, but by constant association with the Lord, they become as good as the Lord himself. Sometimes the devotees act more powerfully than the Lord. Of course, that is the Lord's concession. Also used here is the word varimna, meaning the most worshipful of all yogis. To hear from Lord Krishna is the real pleasure of the senses. Therefore he is known as Govinda, for by his words, by his teachings, by his instruction, by everything connected with him, he enlivens the senses. Whatever he instructs is from the transcendental platform, and his instructions, being absolute, are non-different from him. Hearing from Krishna or his expansion or plenary expansion, like Kapila, is very pleasing to the senses. Bhagavad Gita can be read or heard many times, but because it gives great pleasure, the more one reads Bhagavad Gita, the more he gets the appetite to read and understand it, and each time he gets new enlightenment. That is the nature of the transcendental message. Similarly, we find that transcendental happiness in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. The more we read and hear and chant the glories of the Lord, the more we become happy. I like this purport, so I'm going to save this. This is verse 2. Oh, why does it do that? Every time I copy text, my computer freezes. It's so bizarre. Yad yad vidhate bhagavan swachandatmana swachandatmatmana let me do this slowly. Swachandatmatma mayaya tani mesha dadanasya kirtananyanu. Therefore, please please precisely therefore, please precisely describe all the activities and pastimes of the personality of Godhead, who is full of self-desire and who assumes all these activities by his internal potency. Purport. The word anukirtaya is very significant. Anukirtaya means to follow the description, not to create a concocted mental description, but to follow. Śaunaks Ṛṣi requested Sutta Goswami to describe what he had actually heard from his spiritual master, Shukadeva Goswami, about the transcendental pastimes of the Lord manifested by his internal energy. Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has no material body, but he can assume any kind of body by his supreme will. That is made possible by his internal energy. Sutta uvacha Dvaipayana sakastveva maitreyo bhagavansthata prahedam viduram prita anvikshikyam prachodita. Sri Sutta Goswami said, the most powerful sage Maitreya was a friend of Vyasadeva. Being encouraged and pleased by Vidura's inquiry about transcendental knowledge, Maitreya spoke as follows. Purport. Question and answers are very satisfactorily dealt with when the inquirer is bona fide and the speaker is also authorized. Here, Maitreya is considered a powerful sage, and therefore he is also described as Bhagavan. This word can be used not only for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but for anyone who is almost as powerful as the Supreme Lord. Maitreya is addressed as Bhagavan because he was spiritually far advanced. He was a personal friend of Dvaipayan Vyasadeva, a literary incarnation of the Lord. Maitreya was very pleased with the inquiries of Vidura because they were the inquiries of a bona fide advanced devotee. Thus, Maitreya was encouraged to answer. When there are discourses on transcendental topics between devotees of equal mentality, the questions and answers are very fruitful and encouraging. So, being encouraged and pleased by Vidura's inquiry about transcendental knowledge, Maitreya spoke as follows. So yeah, we're in a conversation within a conversation within a conversation. Sutta Goswami is explaining the conversation between Shukadeva Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj, and Shukadeva Goswami is explaining the conversation, and within that is the conversation of Vidura and Maitreya. So now Maitreya spoke as follows. Maitreya uvacha Pitari prastite ranya matu priya chikirshaya tasmin bindu sare vatsid Bhagavan Kapila kila. Maitreya said, when Kardama left for the forest, Lord Kapila stayed on the strand of the Bindu Sarovar to please his mother Devahuti. Purport. In the absence of the father, it is the duty of the grown son to take charge of his mother and serve her to the best of his ability, so that she will not feel separation from her husband. And it is the duty of the husband to leave home as soon as there is a grown son to take charge of his wife and family affairs. That is the Vedic system of household life. One should not remain continually implicated in household affairs up to the time of death. He must leave. Family affairs and the wife may be taken charge of by a grown son. Tamasinam akarmanam tattvamargargradarshanam sasutam devahutyaha datu sangsmarati vacha. When Kapila, who could show her the ultimate goal of the absolute truth, was sitting leisurely before her, Devahuti remembered the words Brahma had spoken to her, and she therefore began to question Kapila as follows. What time is it? Vacha Nirvina Nitaram Bhuvan Asarindriya Darshanat Yena Sambhavyamanena Prapanandham Tamaprabho. Devahuti said, I am very sick of the disturbance caused by my material senses. For because of this sense disturbance, my Lord, I have fallen into the abyss of ignorance. Purport. Here the word asad indriya tarshanat is significant. Asat means impermanent, temporary, and indriya means senses. Thus, asad indriya tarshanat means from being agitated by the temporarily manifest senses of the material body. We are evolving through different statuses of material bodily existence, sometimes in a human body, sometimes in an animal body. And therefore the engagements of our material senses are also changing. Anything which changes is called temporary, or asat. We should know that beyond these temporary senses are our permanent senses, which are now covered by the material body. The permanent senses, being contaminated by matter, are not acting properly. Devotional service, therefore, involves freeing the senses from this contamination. When the contamination is completely removed and the senses act in the purity of unalloyed Krishna consciousness, we have reached sad indriya, or eternal sensory activities. Eternal sensory activities are called devotional service, whereas temporary sensory activities are called sense gratification. Unless one becomes tired of material sense gratification, there is no opportunity to hear transcendental messages from a person like Kapila. Devahuti expressed that she was tired. Now that her husband had left home, she wanted to get relief by hearing the instructions of Lord Kapila. Tasya tvam tamasondhasya dushparasya dyaparagam Satchakshur janmanam ante labdhang me tvar anugrahat. Your Lordship is my only means of getting out of this darkest region of ignorance, because you are my transcendental eye, which, by your mercy only, I have attained after many, many births. Purport. This verse is very instructive. It's very instructive since it indicates the relationship between the spiritual master and the disciple. The disciple, or conditioned soul, is put into this darkest region of ignorance, and therefore is entangled in the material existence of sense gratification. It is very difficult to get out of this entanglement and attain freedom. But if one is fortunate enough to get the association of a spiritual master like Kapila Muni, or his representative, then by his grace one can be delivered from the mire of ignorance. The spiritual master is therefore worshipped as one who delivers the disciple from the mire of ignorance with the light of the torch of knowledge. The word paragam is very significant. Paragam refers to one who can take the disciple to the other side. This side is conditioned life. The other side is the life of freedom. The spiritual master takes the disciple to the other side by opening his eyes with knowledge. We are suffering simply because of ignorance. By the instruction of the spiritual master, the darkness of ignorance is removed, and thus the disciple is enabled to go to the side of freedom. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita that after many, many births, one surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Similarly, if after many, many births, one is able to find a bona fide spiritual master and surrender to such a bona fide representative of Krishna, one can be taken to the side of light. Ya adyo bhagavan pungsam ishvaro vai bhavan kila lokasya tamasandasya chakshush surya ivodita. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the origin and supreme Lord of all living entities. You have arisen to disseminate the rays of the sun in order to dissipate the darkness of the ignorance in the universe. Sorry. Okay. Sorry, I was just looking at a message. You have arisen to disseminate the rays of the sun in order to dissipate the darkness of the ignorance of the universe. Purport. Kapila Muni is accepted as an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Here the word Adya means the origin of all living entities, and Pungsam Ishvara means the Lord, Ishwar, of the living entities. Ishvara Parama Krishna. Kapila Muni is the direct expansion of Krishna, who is the sun of spiritual knowledge. As the sun dissipates the darkness of the universe, so when the light of the Supreme Personality of Godhead comes down, it at once dissipates the darkness of Maya. We have our eyes, but without the light of the sun, our eyes are of no value. Similarly, without the light of the Supreme Lord, or without the divine grace of the spiritual master, one cannot see things as they are. Atame deva samoham aprakrashtum tamarhasi yo vyagroham namat mamete tasmin yojitastvaya Sorry. Now be pleased, my Lord, to dispel my great delusion. Due to my feeling of false ego, I have been engaged by your Maya, and have identified myself with the body and consequent bodily relations. Purport. The false ego of identifying one's body as oneself and of claiming things possessed in relationship with this body is called Maya. In Bhagavad Gita, 15th chapter, the Lord says, I am sitting in everyone's heart, and from me come everyone's remembrance and forgetfulness. Devahuti has stated that false identification of the body with the self and attachment for possessions in relation to the body are also under the direction of the Lord. Does this mean that the Lord discriminates by engaging one in devotion in his devotional service and another in sense gratification? If that were true, it would be an incongruity on the part of the Supreme Lord. But that is not the actual fact. As soon as the living entity forgets his real constitutional position of eternal servitorship to the Lord, and wants instead to enjoy himself by sense gratification, he is triggered by Maya. Triggered by Maya, the consciousness of false identification with the body and attachment for the possessions of the body. These are the activities of Maya, and since Maya is also an agent of the Lord, it is indirectly the action of the Lord. The Lord is merciful. If anyone wants to forget him and enjoy this material world, facility, not directly, but through the agency of his material potency. Therefore, since the material potency is the Lord's energy, indirectly it is the Lord who gives the facility to forget him. Devahuti therefore said, my engagement in sense gratification was also due to you. Now kindly get me free from this entanglement. By the grace of the Lord, one is allowed to enjoy this material world. But when one is disguised with material enjoyment and but when one is disgusted, why did I say disguised? But when one is disgusted with material enjoyment and is frustrated, sorry guys, I don't know what's wrong with me. But when one is disgusted with material enjoyment and is frustrated, and when one sincerely surrenders unto the lotus feet of the Lord, then the Lord is so kind that he frees one from entanglement. Krishna says, therefore, in Bhagavad Gita, first of all, surrender, and then I will take charge of you and free you from all reactions of sinful activities. Sinful activities are those activities performed in forgetfulness of our relationship with the Lord. In this material world, activities for material enjoyment, which are considered to be pious, are also sinful. For example, one sometimes gives something in charity to a needy person with a view of getting back the money 4 times increased. Giving with the purpose of gaining something is called charity in the mode of passion. Everything done here is done in the modes of material nature, and therefore all activities but service to the Lord are sinful. Because of sinful activities, we become attracted by the illusion of material attachment, and we think, I am this body. I think of the body as myself and of bodily possessions as mine. Devahuti requested Lord Kapila to free her from that entanglement of false identification and false possession. What time is it now? 7:57. Okay, and we're finishing with this verse. Tam tagataham sharanam sharanyam sabrita sangsara taro kutaram jigyasayaham prakrite purushasya namami sadharma vidam varishtam. Jigyasayaham prakrite purushasya. Sorry. Devahuti continued, I have taken shelter of your lotus feet because you are the only person of whom to take shelter. You are the axe which can cut the tree of material existence. I therefore offer my obeisances unto you, who are the greatest of all transcendentalists, and I inquire from you as to the relationship between a man and woman, and between spirit and matter. Purport. Sankhya philosophy, as is well known, deals with Prakriti and Purusha. Purusha is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or anyone who imitates the Supreme Personality, okay, sorry. I was just trying to understand that. Purusha is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or anyone who imitates the Supreme Personality of Godhead as an enjoyer. And Prakriti means nature. In this material world, material nature is being exploited by the Purushas, or the living entities. The intricacies in the material world of the relationship of the Prakriti and Purush, or the enjoyed and the enjoyer, is called samsara, or material entanglement. Devahuti wanted to cut the tree of material entanglement, and she found the suitable weapon in Kapila Muni.
It's 8 o'clock.
The tree of material existence is explained in the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita as an Ashvata tree, whose root is upwards and whose branches are downwards. It is recommended there that one has to cut the root of this material existential tree with the axe of detachment. What is the attachment? The attachment involves Prakriti and Purush. The living entities are trying to lord it over material nature. Since the conditioned soul takes material nature to be the object of his enjoyment, and he takes the position of the enjoyer, he is therefore called Purush. Devahuti questioned Kapila Muni, for she knew that only he could cut her attachment to this material world. The living entities, in the guises of men and women, are trying to enjoy the material energy. Therefore, in one sense, everyone is Purusha, because Purusha means enjoyer, and Prakriti means enjoyed. In Sanskrit and Bengali and in Hindi, also Purusha means man. Purush means man, and Stri is woman. And so, actually, everybody is a male in this material world. Even ladies, they are male, because everybody wants to enjoy. In this material world, both the so-called man and so-called woman are imitating the real Purusha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is actually the enjoyer in the transcendental sense, whereas all others are Prakriti. The living entities are considered Prakriti. In Bhagavad Gita, matter is analyzed as apara, or inferior nature, whereas beyond this inferior nature, there is another superior nature, the living entities. The living entities are also Prakriti, are enjoyed, but under the spell of Maya, the living entities are falsely trying to take the position of enjoyers. That is the cause of samsara bandha, or conditional life. Devahuti wanted to get out of conditional life and place herself in full surrender. The Lord is Sharanya, which means the only worthy personality to whom one can fully surrender, because he is full of all opulences. If anyone actually wants relief, the best course is to surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord is also described here as Sad Dharma Vidam Varishtam. This indicates that of all transcendental occupations, the best occupation is eternal loving service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Dharma is sometimes translated as religion, but that is not exactly the meaning. Dharma actually means that which one cannot give up, that which is inseparable from oneself. The warmth of fire is inseparable from fire. Therefore, warmth is called the Dharma, or nature, of fire. Similarly, Saddharma means eternal occupation. That eternal occupation is engagement in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. The purpose of Kapila Dev's Sankhya philosophy is to propagate pure, uncontaminated devotional service, and therefore he is addressed here as the most important personality amongst those who know the transcendental occupation of the living entity. All right, that's all for today. I'm 3 minutes over time. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol. Jai Shri Guru Gauranga Gandhari Giridhari Shri Radha Vinod Bihari Ju Ki Jai. Shri Govinda Gopinath Maran Mohan Ju Ki Jai. Nitil Pavishta Vishnupar Ashtatara Shata Shri Śrīmad Bhāgavatam Narayan Gosai Maharaj Shri Gurudev Ki Jai. Nitil Pavishta Vishnupar Ashtatara Shata Śrīmad Bhāgavatam Bhavan Gosai Maharaj Ki Jai. Nitil Pavishta Vishnupar Ashtatara Shata Śrīmad Bhāgavatam Swami Maharaj Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nitil Pavishta Vishnupar Ashtatara Shata Śrīmad Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Gosai Maharaj Ki Jai. Nitil Pavishta Vishnupar Ashtatara Shata Śrīmad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Gosai Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nitil Pavishta Mahabhagavat Śrīla Gokṣaras Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Nitil Pavishta Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Śrīla Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Rupana Gauriya Guru Varga Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Patadash Raghunath Shari Gosai Prabhu Ki Jai. Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gopal Vrinda Ki Jai. Nama Chai Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Kshetra Mandala Gaura Mandala Braja Mandala Mathura Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Sarva Abhishta Pradata Giriraj Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Radhakund Shamakund Ki Jai. Shri Yamuna Devi Ganga Devi Ki Jai. Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Shri Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Shri Purnamasi Yogamaya Ki Jai. Shri Gopeshwar Mahadev Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Samagata Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Today is the appearance day of Bhakti Sambandha Turyashrami Maharaj Ki Jai. Shinitai Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bo. Vrindai Tulsi Devai Priyaya Keshavashta Krishna Bhakti Pradadevi Sattvatai Namo Namaha. Vanchakalpa Dandavat Pranams. So tomorrow we will read the answer to Devahuti's questions to Lord Kapila. Dispel this illusion of aham, of mine, and mamiti, of those that are of my and mine, and explain about the jiva and prakriti. So we'll read Kapila Muni's answer to that tomorrow. All right. And tomorrow is the appearance day or disappearance day? I just saw it. Anyways, it's the day of Srila Bhakti Vaibhav Puri Goswami Maharaj and also Narahari Seva Vigraha. All right. Jai Shri Radhe Hari Bol.